As of course today we're talking about Shein. So just to bring you up to speed as to what has been going on with the brand recently. So in the UK, so for those of you in the UK, you might have seen this because this was all over the news and a lot of people were talking about this. Representatives from Shein and Temu were in court in the UK and they were being questioned around their labour practices with allegations of child labour and forced labour in their supply chains. The main reason why these companies had to have a hearing in the UK is because there are reports that Shein is going to have a £50 billion listing on the London Stock Exchange. So because of that, a lot of campaigners have been very against this in the UK and they are fighting against Shein's ability to be on the London Stock Exchange. So that's why they had that hearing and they were being questioned by a lot of the lawmakers in the UK. So what we're going to do is we are going to watch some of the clips from this in court and see what the Shein and Temu lawyers have to say for themselves. So let's see what the representatives have to say in their defense of what has been accused of their supply chain.
I'm trying to understand how you can lay out the regions that you're using in China, but you're unable to lay out if any cotton is being manufactured in China. It's not adding up.
I will say that you have not answered to the best of your ability and you've obfuscated willfully.
Joining us from Shein and from Temu this afternoon to give us evidence. And perhaps I could just start the questioning with your good self. Could you just tell us, do you source cotton from China?
So Shein is a company originated and developed in China, leveraging the Chinese supply chain. And we have since grown into a global business with presence in over 150 countries.
But do you source cotton from China today?
So our suppliers, we do not obviously own any manufacturing facilities. Mm-hmm. We work with a wide network of suppliers.
No, why does every brand do this? I just knew she was gonna say that. Do you guys produce cotton in China or not? Well, so how it works and how it really goes and what we really do and how we actually do this thing is we have a bunch of suppliers that we collaborate with. Every single brand has been doing this recently. We've talked about LVMH do this too, where they say, oh, we work with a lot of third-party suppliers so that they can remove a lot of the responsibility from themselves. It's so annoying how they dilly-dally around the questions. It's so annoying. And all of them, it feels like every fashion corporation has the same talking points.
Contract manufacturers, we have manufacturers in China, in Brazil, in Turkey, and we're obviously looking at the other potential supply chain.
In the products that you ship, there is cotton from China.
Like I mentioned, the suppliers we work with, they are based in China, in Turkey, and Brazil, and obviously many of them are in China.
Okay, this isn't a trick question, it's not a complicated question. In the products that you ship, will there be cotton from China?
So the suppliers we work with, most of them, they're based in regions...
It's actually a yes or no question, actually.
Right? It's literally a yes or no question. I love this person that's questioning because this person is not messing around. So in your supply chain, is cotton in China? It's a yes or no question. I love how this person isn't taking any of it.
Do you think that there is cotton from China in the products that you ship? Yes or no?
My understanding and...
She was almost there. She almost said yes. And then she went into my understanding. Let's go back. She almost said yes. She was so close.
Yes or no?
My understanding, and also, Chair, with all due respect, while I understand that today's discussion is about international supply chain and upholding labour rights and standards, I can only answer questions as far as my position and responsibility relates to. So I'll do the best I can to answer your questions.
Smart lawyer. She almost said yes. She was like, yeah, and then she caught herself, and then she went into the proper lawyer game where she's like, well, the supply chain, that is not my area of expertise, so I can only answer questions that are within my jurisdiction. That's a very lawyer tactic.
The extent there are details that I'm not able to provide, if you would allow me, we can provide written response after the hearing.
Right, okay. But the first question is there cotton from China in the goods that you sell?
Chair, thank you again for your patience. with all due respect, may I please ask for permission to be able to write to you about the further questions you may have?
You can't tell the committee today whether there is cotton from China in the products that Shein sells.
What I'm able to share with the committee, obviously we comply with laws and regulations everywhere we do business.
That's good.
And we have supplier code of conduct, we have robust systems and procedures in place.
So guys, if you guys follow the streams where we talked about like what was going on with Armani and Dior and their supply chains, just because they are following the supply chain code of conduct doesn't mean anything, because we've already seen that the way that they do the audits and the way that they do the checks are really flawed, which is why that supply chain wasn't found to be faulty by Dior and Armani until the police became involved. So when a lawmaker tells you that, you know, we are complying by all the supply chain ethics, it doesn't actually mean anything. It sounds good, but it doesn't mean anything.
Place and policies in place, and we also have a very strong enforcement measures in place to ensure we adhere to these high standards that are expected in our supply chain, and we take these.
You can't tell the committee today whether there is cotton from China in the products that you sell.
As mentioned, Chair, with all due respect, for detailed operational information and other aspects I'm not able to assist, I will have to write back to the committee afterwards.
But in November 2022, Bloomberg found the presence of cotton from Xinjiang in garments sold by Shein on 2 occasions. Are you still using cotton from Xinjiang?
I think in answering a similar question earlier to the Chair, our position is the most important principle for us is we comply with the laws and regulations in the countries that we operate in.
And you're confident you're in compliance with the UK Modern Slavery Act?
Our position is we are compliant with relevant UK laws.
But how can they know that they are complying with relevant UK laws if the lawyer has spent the first how many minutes saying that they work with third-party manufacturers, so she can't say surely if they use Chinese cotton or not? And she has to write. She was asking for permission to write back to like the MPs based on this whole thing. That doesn't make any sense.
Just a couple of questions to understand your level of visibility of your supply chain. So what do you have factories in China?
So yeah, perhaps if it's helpful, I'll just
Or suppliers?
Take a step back. So we do not. It's not vertically integrated. So we do not own any factories or manufacturing facilities.
I'm not sorry. Does
the network of
Shein have suppliers that make Shein clothing in China?
Yes.
Do you know what regions in China?
So, as I mentioned earlier, obviously China we leverage the Chinese supply chain. It's a country we have very significant operations
Do you know
in.
what regions you leverage?
So our contract manufacturers are generally concentrated in the regions where the country as a whole, where they have more capability in the fashion manufacturing sector.
Yeah, and do you know what regions they are?
That would include South China, for example, Guangdong Province, and East China, Zhejiang Province, North China, Liaoning Province, Central China, Hunan Province, and so on. There are
West
quite
China?
a lot of...
You mentioned every other point. What about West China?
There are, in West China, I think in Guizhou Province, for example...
Guizhou is in West
No,
China.
we'll come to you in a moment, but Ms. Writing has the floor.
And similarly, because this level of, because I personally have visited some of the suppliers, I'm able to, based on the information I have, share.
Yeah, some. Emphasis on some, because you can't say that you're following UK regulations when you don't even have any idea exactly on your specific supply chain. That doesn't really make sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense, to be honest. Also, to respond to Leo is saying, honest question, is there a specific reason legally the MP is questioning about Chinese cotton specifically? Like, is there some British law against Chinese cotton? No, so there's no British law against Chinese cotton. The reason why they are being questioned this way is because in the production of cotton in China is where they found child labor and forced labor through the Bloomberg investigation. So that's why they're questioning, because of course to join the London Stock Exchange, you have to be authorized to actually be part of it. So if lawmakers or the government deems that they don't want to authorize you, then you can't join the London Stock Exchange. It's just that simple. So that's why they are being questioned. The lawmakers are really trying to understand whether they truly are compliant with UK laws and regulations. Because if you're not legally compliant with UK laws and regulations in your industry, then you aren't allowed to join the London Stock Exchange, right? So that's the reason why they are talking about specifically Chinese cotton, because the Chinese cotton is where the issues lie in their supply chain. So no, it's not like Chinese cotton is illegal in the UK. There's like a very specific reason why.
These, but I think that's perhaps, not to avoid giving committee incorrect information or incomplete information. If you would allow me, I can write to the committee afterwards.
Yeah, no, we would like you to definitely write to us. It's just, I'm trying to understand how you can lay out the regions that you're using in China, but you're unable to lay out if any cotton is being manufactured in China for your Shein products. It's not adding up.
I don't think you're respecting the committee at all. So I'm on your website, and I can see about 20 products which are all cotton, which I've just searched under cotton, and yet you say to our chair that you can't state whether Shein is selling any products which are made in China, which are made of cotton. I find that completely ridiculous. And I find it very unhelpful and disrespectful that you're here doing this. You mention every other spot of the compass, but you don't mention West China, apart from, I think it was Guangzhou, which is in southwest China. You don't mention Xinjiang at all. And it's willful ignorance.
Come to a question.
And, well, I'm asking you whether you think you are being disrespectful by being so blank and void of answers.
Thank you for your question, and with due respect, I am doing the best I can to answer the questions the committee has.
I'm interrupting, but I disagree that you are doing the best you can. You're not. You're not giving us straight answers.
I am giving the answers to the best of my ability, and
that is not.
Well, she's obviously not giving the best answers to the best of her ability, because she almost said yes. And she caught herself. So she knows what the reality is. But of course, I don't expect her to expose the company that she works for. Obviously, that no one's expecting that. But why I like these things to happen is when these companies are questioned, you can see that clearly how many holes are in their supply chain. The fact they don't really know what's going on. They're saying that they're using third parties to remove any responsibility from themselves. Like it becomes very obvious for people to see. So that's why I appreciate these things, because you are definitely not, answering these questions to the best of your ability. That's not true.
Not true. That is simply not true. We have asked you some very, very, very simple questions, and you are not giving us straight answers. And that, I find, dismisses the point of why we are here today. Do you understand how simple the questions we are asking you are? Do any of your products, do they have cotton from China? That is not difficult.
I understand the question, and I believe in earlier questions and answers I have answered to the best of my ability and offered on the questions I'm unable to answer today.
Okay, I will park it. I will say that you have not answered to the best of your ability, and you've obfuscated willfully.
Does the company visit the factories, contracted factories that make Shein clothing? Yes or no?
So the auditors, the external auditors we engage, they do visit
the employees of Shein.
They're not employees of Shein. Of course, there are Shein employees that visit the factories, but we don't want to just mark our own homework. We engage verified external auditors to do.
Yep, guys, I knew it. I knew they were going to talk about the verified external auditors. Now, once again, you guys, if you haven't, check out my live stream that we did about the supply chain of Dior and Armani and how they use auditors and the nature of how these auditors are used. Because if you watch that, you would know that them saying, because these companies try to make it seem like they care. So they're like, we are so transparent that we wouldn't send our own staff. We use external auditors, even though some auditors are paid off. Some auditors are influenced into not being able to find anything. Also, the rules for these auditors are really stiff. So one of the rules, it mandates that, obviously, in general, auditors can't just come randomly. And obviously, if an auditor gives you a 2-week heads up, you can spend all that time clearing everything, getting rid of things. In the case of the company that Dior was using, the factory that Dior was using, there were a lot of workers that were working illegal hours, and they would just disappear from the factory when the auditors come. And the second the auditors leave, all these workers would be right back to work and all that sort of stuff. So when companies say, we have a group of external auditors that we work with, just know it doesn't mean anything. Like it's meaningless. It is no indication of anything being good about their supply chain when they start talking about external auditors.
The on-site audits.
And as part of that quality audit, would your auditors ask about the source of the materials that they're using to ensure the consistency of the product output?
So my understanding is, as I mentioned, there is this over 140 items checklist. So they will follow the checklist and issue reports accordingly. As perhaps mentioned earlier, if we need more details on the audits and the items they check in the audits, that's something, level of information we will have to provide afterwards.
It's so funny when, that phrase where they say, if you allow someone to talk enough, they will expose themselves. She I don't think she meant to, but she kind of owned up to them not having any idea. Because she just said that she has to look closer at exactly what the auditors are auditing. So she's almost owned up to the auditing being flawed. Because as a company, if you have to overly verify what the auditors are doing, it means that there's something wrong with the process of the auditing.
Your company's view that there is forced labour in Xinjiang in China?
Again, back to the agenda of the committee, as I understand it, we're looking at
the agenda for the committee is, as I set out, what the agenda is. And the question is, does your company fear that there is forced labour in Xinjiang?
I'm only able to answer the questions that are relating to our business.
But you cannot tell me whether Shein fears there is forced labour in Xinjiang.
As mentioned, I don't think it's our place to comment on just having a geopolitical debate. My responsibility
geopolitical
here,
debate, it's a question of fact.
I am only able to answer questions as they are related to our business.
Okay, but if your business is sourcing product from Xinjiang, then you ought to know whether there are risks of forced labour in your products.
If you would allow me, I can explain a little bit about our business. Our business, obviously, is about...
We'll get into that, don't worry. Let me just follow that question up, though, to ask, do you think that there is a problem with due diligence for investigating human rights in Xinjiang?
Again, if there is a specific...
That's a good question, by the way. That's a really good question. Because she kind of forced herself into a corner by saying that, we need to actually check our auditors and we need to do this. So he has now said, do you just have a problem with due diligence in your supply chain? Like, that is such a good question.
Xinjiang.
Again, if there is a specific question about our business and how we do supply chain due diligence, I'm happy to explain here to the committee how we carry out a supply chain due diligence, if I may.
Okay.
So we have supplier code of conduct and responsible sourcing standards, and all of these documents are publicly available on our website. But not only, so the contract manufacturers that Shein works with, they're required to sign up to these standards. But not only they need to sign up, they need to fully understand the importance of the issue. So we run hundreds of trainings every year with the suppliers, and we have a robust system in place. We carried out close to 4,000 audits. 92% of these were carried out by third-party, internationally verified agencies, and such as SGS, Intertek, OpenView, Veratus. These audits are indeed intended to ensure the robustness of our supply.
Oh my God, how can she say that these audits are intended to ensure the robustness of the supply chain when investigators have found issues in the supply chain? Those two things don't add up. That doesn't make any sense. I don't even know how she said that with a straight face, honestly. Like, if investigators have investigated your supply chain and found forced labor and child labor, and then you come here and say these people are there to ensure that we adhere to certain standards, those two things are literally opposites. Those two things can't be true at the same time. That doesn't make any sense at all. That really doesn't make any sense. And this is why it's always good to have people that question things. I mean, on my channel, that's what my channel is about, right? It's about looking at the facts and then seeing where the cracks are within the facts. Because a lot of people, especially online, will just see what people say and be like, well, this company said that they do this and they are audited by so-and-so person, and they don't look deeper. So they just take everything as, so it should be fine. There are a lot of influencers online who are paid a lot of money via Shein and BN hauls. Those are the kind of people you'll see online being like, well, if you go on Shein's website, you can see all the partners that they are working with to make sure that their supply chain is clean and stuff like that. Oh gosh.
Chain and labor rights protection. When these are conducted, the agencies are particularly vigilant on forced labor and child labor issues.
So yeah, that essentially was one of the clips. You guys can watch the full thing on YouTube. I don't want to watch the whole thing because it might be copyrighted. Also, to answer Leah's question quickly, because Leah was asking why specifically are they focusing on Chinese cotton. So this is exactly why. Because in their supply chain, they found that there are forced labor camps involved in making the cotton, and a lot of the cotton imports that come from China, there is forced labor involved. So that's specifically why they are asking, okay, do you make cotton in China? Now, if that's the case, where exactly does this cotton come from? And do you have a good understanding of exactly every aspect of that supply chain, where this cotton comes from? So that's the reason why they are specifically questioning cotton in China. It's not because cotton is illegal in China. They've even said here that around 20% of the world's cotton is made in China, and Xinjiang cotton accounts for 85% of all Chinese cotton, and that's where a lot of the labor camps are said to be. So that's why the questioning and, you know, the wording is around that specifically. They're serving bullshit just like the products. I know, right? Wait, I am not proud of it, but if Shein asked me for a sponsored video, I would deny. I am not Satan. I feel like most influencers or like fashion content creators have probably been offered something by Shein. I've been offered things by Shein and Temu over and over and over again. Like there was a time, they don't ask me anymore, but there was a time when they wouldn't leave me alone. Even though I literally sent them an email and said, I'm not interested, they still were like, no, but like, we feel like this would be really good and like, we will pay you this much and blah, 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 blah. So I feel like most people get offered those things, to be fair. How can they sell earrings for, yeah, I know, 0.77 euros, that would barely cover the materials. I know, right? So you just know that the labor cost is almost null and void if they can afford to sell things for that price. It is actually quite insane. It is quite insane. This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind-the-scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club, where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.